Okay, everyone, welcome. Welcome to Professor Guy Moore presentation of the history of Krav Maga and much more. I know it's going to be much more than just the history. I've met Professor Guy Moore through Professor Andrade, that will come later today. And the objective of this session is to provide all of us and the other ones that will join or later in the recordings with I'm going to call it a concise history of Krav Maga and removing or bringing more questions on why we do this and where did it came from. Please, Professor Guy Moore, the floor is yours. Give us a brief introduction and then take us where you want to.
Okay, hi everybody. So first of all, thank you all for attending. I'll be very happy if you will stop and ask questions. Okay, so don't hesitate. We will start our discussion with a short history on the Israeli nation, because in my opinion, in order to understand Krav Maga, you have to understand Israeli mentality, because Krav Maga is like a mirror of Israeli mentality. And it's very difficult to understand it if you don't understand like our heritage and how we think. So we'll start from there. We'll take it step by step. We'll reach to the point of Israeli combat disciplines development, who developed it, and how it came to what we know today. And again, at any point that you want to ask something, just stop me and ask, okay? And sometimes I'll say, okay, we'll answer it in a few minutes. Sometimes I'll say, what is the answer? And sometimes I'll say, I don't know. Okay, so if I won't know, I won't try to, to invent an answer. I will just let you know that I don't know. And if I will have a way to answer you later, so I'll write it down and then I'll discuss with Goncalo and I'll give you the answer. So I hope you'll enjoy this trip. And again, just feel absolutely free to ask whenever you feel like it. So everybody sees the PowerPoint presentation? Yeah, get it. Okay. So before we start, I want to take you just a little bit into Hebrew. And I want to show you that all of you speak Hebrew fluently. You know the word shalom, right? You know? Say with the head, no, maybe. Shalom is hi, hello. So this is the first word in Hebrew. Telephone?
Yes.
You know telephone, right?
Yeah, okay.
Banana, yeah. Skateboard, radio. Okay, so you know Hebrew. Okay, sababa in Hebrew is a word that we can always use it. So someone asks you how you feel today, you can say sababa. Okay, are you hungry? Sababa. Do you want to go somewhere? Sababa. Okay, it actually means everything and means nothing. So if you're in Israel and someone asks you something and you answer sababa, like 80% you got it right. Okay, so
in New Jersey, they say forget about it.
Yeah. I think that's much better. So every time we have a visitor from abroad, we tell him, all you have to know is to say sababa. You go to a restaurant and they ask you, what do you want to eat? Sababa. Okay, so like, go for it. Now, the last phrase, I'm sure you know, I'll say it in Hebrew, okay? In Hebrew is Krav Maga, and in English is Krav Maga, right? How do you say in Portuguese?
Krav Maga.
Krav Maga, like Hebrew. So it's the same, because we're cousins, Middle East, everyone is the same. So now, do you know what is the translation of the term Krav Maga? Guys, anyone?
I'm going to call it close combat.
Contact combat?
Yeah, okay. So, Krav Maga is actually two words. Krav is combat, and Maga is contact. Okay, so Krav Maga actually is contact combat. Okay, this is the formal translation. But do you know the term Krav Maga Israeli? Israeli Krav Maga? Have you ever heard about it?
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Okay, Israeli is, Israeli. So
Yeah.
what is Israeli Krav Maga? Israeli contact combat. What is it? Is it a method? What do you think? What do you know? You train in Krav Maga. What is it?
I think it's like a trademark. It's like saying Japanese karate.
Okay.
It would have the same, to be a way for the Israelis to tell the world, no, this is ours. Krav Maga is ours. Krav Maga is from Israel. Unless the Israeli means something else for methods.
Okay, you understand why you have to learn Hebrew? Okay, this is why I told you before banana and skateboard, it's very, very relevant. Okay, so actually, Krav Maga is a generic name, like martial arts.
Yeah.
Okay, exactly like you said, like if you go to Japan and you say karate, karate is a generic name. You go to China, you have wushu or kung fu, which is a generic name. So Krav Maga actually means contact combat. Judo is a form of contact combat. Wrestling is a form of contact combat. So actually, if I teach judo, I can go tomorrow to America and say, look, I'm a Krav Maga instructor. Okay? Because I teach contact combat. Guys, I don't like your faces.
No, it's very interesting to see our world that is full of tradition, but in many places also a kind of a commercial side of it. No, it's two things. It's what does it mean in terms of the thinking behind this is Krav Maga, it's this type of thing, and then how that is played out to the public. And with such a broader definition, Guy, we can have Krav Maga being many things.
Right, exactly.
And that's why I believe, and I've seen that over the years, Krav Maga then has something else, XYZ method, FEKM, FPK, whatever. It has something that says, this is my Krav Maga, or this is the thing that I believe inside the big bulk of Krav Maga.
This is why you're a rocket scientist, okay? you got it. Okay, so guys, pay close attention, please. All over the world, Krav Maga is the name of a method. Because when I say I train Krav Maga, you mean I train in a specific method which is called Krav Maga. Also in Israel, when people are learning Krav Maga, they say I learn Krav Maga, I don't learn judo, or I don't learn karate. But on the broader approach, Krav Maga is just a general terminology. And Krav Maga Israeli, which is Israeli Krav Maga, people tried to register a trademark on it, and they couldn't, because you cannot trademark Israeli language. Okay, so when you look at the trademarks registrations in the government, you can see that at the beginning, there were many trademarks of Krav Maga, and now there are almost none. Because you can register the sketch, the logo, but you cannot register the word. So if a person comes to you and says, look, I'm an original Krav Maga, what do you mean? You're original Israeli? You're original martial artist? What original are you? Like, Okay, and I'm gonna complicate it you a little bit more. In the army, they have a basic course of Krav Maga instructors of 6 weeks. Now, my friend who is the head of Krav Maga in the army, he always tells me, Guy, I'm looking for well-coordinated people. So if you have a very good basketball player who is very coordinated, bring it to me in 6 weeks. He will be an IDF, Israeli Defense Force, Krav Maga instructor. And he's doing it. Now, this guy who did a 6 weeks course, he is a Krav Maga instructor. However, would you consider him a Krav Maga instructor after a 6 weeks course?
I was just going to ask that question because 6 weeks seems a little bit too short, depending on how many hours a day, because you got to practice it a lot. But
8 hours a day.
8 hours a day. I mean, I still think he would need more, but I mean, he probably has a good institutional knowledge of what he learned.
Okay. When you do the 6 weeks course, you learn these techniques and how to teach them. Okay. So if they decided you need 20 techniques, so you learn these 20 techniques and how to teach them. And then you are a Krav Maga instructor. Okay, you also have a senior Krav Maga instructors and you have a Krav Maga officer, which are much more educated, okay, in terms of combat disciplines, but this is something else. So now when we're talking about Krav Maga in general, I think we all need to understand that if a person comes to you and say, look, I'm a Krav Maga instructor. So the first question is, sorry, what do you mean by when you say Krav Maga? Like, do you mean Krav Maga Judo, Krav Maga Wrestling, Krav Maga Imi, Krav Maga this, Krav Maga that? And you are instructors, that's very nice. Where did you get your qualification? Was it in the army, a 6 weeks course? Or are you like an officer, a Krav Maga officer, which their qualification is very profound? It's completely different. Okay. Any questions, guys?
Guy, I have a question, and
Yes.
you can table this for another time, but I don't want to escape my thoughts. So this is more broadly speaking, with Israel as being a very unique nation in terms of its history, ancient and recent, and its general circumstances. I find it very peculiar that that there's this exporting of knowledge that is self-defense, because I would expect that there would be more insularity on terms of the techniques that are used to protect oneself, and yet there's almost strangely evangelicism about Krav Maga, which is obviously not the case for Judaism and for the past 2000, basically since Rome. So it just seems like such a contrast that in one way, this is the one example, besides science in general, I'm talking about, that's true, that Israel's produces more Nobel Prizes than anywhere besides America. I just find this very strange that this knowledge of how one would be able to handle oneself in a very physically dangerous situation is exported, which is could be put into the wrong hands. Do you have anything to say about that?
Okay, first of all, shoot me and kill me. Okay, because you touched here a very problematic point. Okay, and I want you to hold it till the end.
Sure. Like
okay.
it might be, yeah. And I know
Write it down.
you're
Write
not
it down.
speaking. You're not speaking. I wouldn't hold you responsible.
No.
But,
Write it
but
down.
as a historian, you're learned.
Yeah, write it down, please. It's very important, and we'll try to discuss it later, because there isn't any answer.
Okay. That's what,
Okay, there's no answer. Yeah.
okay.
But this is like one of my main problems, okay, which I try to address academically.
Yep.
And without too much success, I have to say. Okay. So what I'm going to present you today is like some knowledge which I gathered through academic research. And when we're talking about research, it's important to say that it's not something that I think or feel or I want to tell you. It is something that should be based on something. So this was like in historical research. So I went to many archives, okay, of the Israel Defense Force, the Palmach, Wingate, Judah, wherever. And every piece of information, we did like triangulations, like we had to find it in at least 3 different sources to verify it. Okay, so meaning, and we didn't use any private books.
Okay.
Okay, and not websites. Okay, so because if now I'll open the web, I'll ask a question, which we'll ask later, and all the website will say the same, but this information is wrong. Okay, because like I open the website, so I'll write there whatever I want. But if you want to go more scientifically, so we go to history books and we're trying to understand what really happened. So this is the point that if I tell you something, it's valid. And again, if you ask me something that I don't know, I just tell you I don't know. Like you ask now, Isaac, yeah. And I said, okay, it's a big question. I'm not sure I'll be able to answer it. So for those of you who don't know, do you see like the cursor? Yeah, you can see my cursor? Yeah, okay. So this is Africa here down below. This here is Europe, and this is Asia. Now, this is Israel. This little tiny thing here. Actually, this is Israel, only the red part on the map of Texas. So you'll understand how small it is. But the thing is that it's very important because it's a land bridge between Africa, Europe, and Asia. So in the old days, everybody wanted to rule Israel because that was the way to move all kinds of goods from the 3 continents. And this caused a lot of problems. Okay. So just a brief history. Like the first evidence for any Israel entity residence was found in the Egyptian pyramids, and there was a king that actually wrote down that he conquered Israel and actually took the Israeli nation as slaves into Egypt. And this goes right in hand with our written tradition, which cannot be validated, but this information is validated because it is found written in pyramids in Egypt. If you know a little bit about the Bible, there was a time that there was a great hunger in Israel and the Israeli population went to Egypt. So this story says actually there wasn't hunger or anything. The Egyptians just conquered Israel and took them captive. But the thing is the year. We are talking about 1200 BC. And this is like the first evidence for any Israel residence in Israel. Okay. Later on, we have a very established tradition, which also is documented, I'll say in stones, like in archaeology foundings that say, okay, yes, there was an Israeli kingdom. We have known kings who ruled like the territory, which is somewhere where Israel is today. And there was King Shaul and King David and Samson the Great, which actually about Samson the Great, there's lots of tales, but only one coin was found. Okay, archaeology matter. There's only one coin which they think that is relevant for Samson. So this figure, Samson the Great, actually is not validated, but it's in our tradition. And you can see that there's quite a long dynasty of Israeli kingdom, let's say, ruling in the land of Israel. At some point, they fought and they decided to split into two kingdoms, Judah and Israel kingdom, but again, they were both Israelis. And actually then the problem started. So if you look at this timeline from below and up, so around this time, around 1200 BC, it's the beginning of the Israeli, let's say, ruling over Israel. And then at some point, other nations started to rule this territory. And you can see that all this time, from about just before century, 600 BC, around here, all this timeline, Israel was occupied by other nations. Okay, except from two small tribes of Israel to rebel against whoever ruled them. Why all this is important? All this is important because this is like our heritage. We started, let's say, quite good as a very proud nation with kings and heroes and all kinds of, storytelling. And then, actually, all this time, except here, Judah Maccabeus, except this very small period, we were occupied by other nations. But in our mind, the land is ours. Okay? We ruled the land, and in all these years, we were exiled and we were, controlled. And then we came back to modern time. So in the 19th century, actually, most of the Jews lived outside of Israel. Like all the generation, there was always a small Israel presence, Jewish presence in Israel. Usually it was in Jaffa, in Jerusalem, and in Safat, which were like small settlements with Jewish residents. But most of the Jews actually lived in Europe. Some of them lived in other countries, as Iraq and Syria and other Eastern countries. And in Europe, I don't know why. Actually, I don't know. I know why, but I won't say it on this video. Local people in Europe didn't like the Jews. So they suffered a lot of anti-Semitism, a lot of violence, and lots of problems. When the Enlightenment period and emancipation period started in Europe, Jews thought that it will help them as well. Because if now there's like a revival, more democratic and more modern approach, maybe it will influence also the attitude towards Jews. So Jews in Europe says we are French Jews or we are German Jews. We're French first because our loyalty is first to the French government, and only then we are Jews. And the same in Germany and the same all over Europe. It didn't work. Okay, anti-Semitism continued, and especially in Russia. And pay attention why, because in Russia there were 4.5 million Jews. So actually there was a very big Jewish settlement there. And in Russia there were lots of pogroms, which are violent acts against Jews. And they triggered the burst of Zionism. Now, please excuse me for all this, okay? If it's too much, just let me know, but it's relevant, okay? So What is Zionism? Okay, now think that there are Jews living in Europe, mostly in Russia. They see that all the native nations are progressing, and Jews are not. So Jews started to think, and they say, okay, we try to be Russian Jews, we try to be French Jews, we try to be German Jews, but it doesn't work. So what can we do? So first of all, the idea is to do. Okay, before that, they were sitting down and they were waiting for the government to help them. Somehow that the government will see that Jews are trying to be very nice and integrate into society, so maybe someone will help us. So part of Zionism is activism. We are not waiting any longer. It's time for us to act. And how do we act? First of all, we have a land. Our land is Israel. We want to go back to the land which is ours. So we will act to go there. Now we want justice and we want equality like all the others. Starting to revive the Hebrew language, because Hebrew was like a sacred language talked only in synagogues. And they started to revive it, to make it like an everyday language. And starting to encourage Jews to immigrate to Zion, which is Jerusalem, which is Israel. Okay, so now do you have like the timeline and the general idea? So can you summarize it, please, one of you? What do we know until now?
But what was, I've made some work on why people move from a country X to a country Y. And besides I'm going to call it the pyramid of Maslow, that is not a pyramid. It's incorrect to see it as a pyramid because you could be thirsty and transcending at the same time. And it's not, the question is, when someone or a nation immigrates to a place, and I follow the Portuguese because, well, I'm Portuguese and we had similar, we not only move to other countries or find immigration, not only because of the money or, but also because of the lack of social quality or lack of belonging. And then there is this, oh, but in fact, we don't belong there. We try to belong in a place, but you don't really belong there. So is this like the comeback of where do we belong after we've tried all of these? We tried all of the tricks in the book in a way, but there is a part of us that needs to go back. What I'm asking is, from seeing in here, and I know that from other studies made in Nazi German, that, and later on even from Italy, that the Jews held cash, held money, and they loaned money heavily to others, and people find ways not to pay. That's a big problem.
Do you know why? Do you know why? Because they were forbidden mostly for buying land. They didn't want them to become regular residents. So they had to rely mostly on merchandise and money because they had to be able to go fast away. Okay, so like this is like something like the egg and the chicken, you know? Why does the major, I'm not sure if I'm right, but why does Jew usually are incorporated with money and with banking and with loans? Why? Because they didn't have any alternatives. They didn't give them the chance to be farmers. They didn't want them to integrate in the country. Okay, so it's like
my question was more, as an individual and as an immigrant, I feel that the cycle, you know, it's,
Yes.
how does that apply to a nation that is constantly abroad? And I don't understand the triggers. You see what I mean? I understand that there is a push, but on the other hand, I'm sure that the Jews, when they immigrated, also found good things, not only bad things.
They didn't immigrate, they were exiled.
Exiled, okay.
They didn't want to leave.
Yeah, that's the trigger. Okay.
Okay, like they had to go away because every nation that came to Israel, some of them started like and tried to leave the Israelis in Israel, but some of them exiled them like to Persia or exiled them to other states. And Israeli was mostly like a place that people are going through. And every time like there were problems and the Jews tried to rise against the local government. So actually they, I don't want to say butchered them, but killed them, which is, of course, if Bar Kokhba is having a rebellion against the Romans, of course the Romans will kill him.
Yeah.
Okay, so other people say, okay, this is what's happening here, so I'll move. I'll exile to another territory. So this is kind of the balance. We didn't immigrated because we wanted to. We immigrated because we were exiled. Okay, now religious people in the synagogue, all the time they pray to go back to Jerusalem. And all the synagogues in the world are facing towards Jerusalem. So this is something which is very strong in Jewish tradition, that you want to go back to Jerusalem to build the temple, okay? The first temple, which was very in the old days, in like biblical age. Okay. Did I answer? Yeah, did I answer the?
Yeah, I understand the pull now, the pull and the push. That's what I was trying to get at. Okay.
Yeah. So actually, Jews had a problem. Like they wanted to integrate, but they couldn't. Okay, so they had two alternatives. Like Jews in Europe had two alternatives. One is go to America, to the United States, and some of them took this alternative. And other, maybe you can say, which were not so lucky, I don't know, decided to go to Israel. Now, Israel is the promised land. Israel is the place of God, and Israel is like our home, our place, and there we can revive the Israeli nation and the Hebrew language, and there we can live as free people without being afraid from the nations which we are living inside them now. Hope that makes some sense. So part of Zionism was also to form self-defense forces in Europe. And there is substantial evidence that in some Jewish communities in Europe, they formed self-defense organizations. And when they had problem with local thugs who wanted to perform acts of anti-Semitism, there were Jews who were ready to fight and fought to defend the Jewish community in Europe. One of the, yeah.
Guy, and they were not able to be in the armies of those host countries that they would be in for some temporary period of time. It might be Poland, it might be England, and before they get the boot, but they wouldn't be allowed to be in those armies or carry weapons, right?
Some of them were in the armies, especially in Russia, but this was like a problem because Jews didn't want to serve in the Russian army. Okay, so it's was more like compulsory, and in a few minutes we'll see that there is like transcendence of knowledge from the Russian army to Israel through this Jewish guy who served in the Russian army.
Mm.
Okay, and 1 minute, I'll remember the name. In France, there was one of a very famous Dreyfus trial. Did you heard about it? Dreyfus was
Alpha Dreyfus.
yeah, Alfred Dreyfus was an officer in the French army, and he was accused of, I think, being espionage against French. Now, it took time until they cleared him up, but they were Jews who served in the army in Europe. Okay, not all of them, but there were some.
Oh.
Okay, so Max Nordau, this guy, he, I don't want to say invented, but he put down the term muscle Judaism. Now, muscle Judaism resembles to Christian muscularity. Yeah, do you know this term? Now, historically speaking, Christian muscularity was before muscle Judaism. So, like when I wrote the paper, I got like a comment from one of the reviewers. Look, you write muscle Judaism, but Christian muscularity was before, so please refer to it in your article. So I don't know if there's a connection. Okay, I don't know if Max Nordau saw the Christian muscularity and he says, okay, let's take it and do muscle Judaism. But actually, Christian muscularity was before Judaism muscularity. And the idea is that Jews needs to be strong, fit. They need to be able to fight and protect themselves. And again, this all is part of Zionism. Now, in Israel, there's a very old saying which says, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? And if not now, when? Okay, in Hebrew, it sounds much better. Okay. But the idea is, and again, is that Jewish philosophers in these times connected Zionism to old tradition. And this is a very old saying from biblical days. And they harnessed like the biblical thoughts or ideas to modern Zionism. Okay, and the connection is very important, because if I will come in this time and I say, look, guys, let's do Zionism because the situation here is not so good. So let's be active. Let's be this, let's be that. So it wouldn't work. But the minute that you say, look, this is our heritage, and this is what we used to say, and this is where we've been, and this is, now let's do it today. So the connection is much stronger. Okay? So actually, Zionism was constructed on old Jewish philosophical ideas and on the fact that Israel was once a Jewish kingdom or Israeli kingdom. Okay, guys? I lost you?
No,
Okay.
I didn't. No, definitely not.
Okay, so the first evidence for any organized combat discipline in Israel is found in 1891. And actually, there were two ex-Russian soldiers, Isaac, that were soldiers in the Russian army. And they started to teach some form of self-defense in this place called Rehovot. Okay, now it's a bit interesting because I was living in Rehovot at the time that I was doing this research. And then I saw somewhere about these guys, and I went to Rehovot archives to find the information. So it was quite, stunning for me that I live in this city. I know exactly where Zarnuga is. Okay, I go in this place today. And actually I say, okay, this is where the Arabs were. And here is where the Jewish were, because we have all these buildings. And like these two guys were teaching the Israeli residents how to fight. Now, they were using long sticks. Why? Because in the Russian army, they had swords. And when they were training, in order not to hurt each other, they used long sticks. So actually, there's a transformation from Russian training into these groups. And these two guys trained like about 100 people in self-defense. We don't know exactly what it was. But when there was another incident with the Arabs in the next village, which is Zarnuga, so the Jews came with their hands upright and they actually won this fight thanks to this. Whoever knows what was the training system. Okay, but this is actually the first evidence for something which is constructed of Israeli hand-to-hand combat training. Now, another thing of using the sticks, do you know? Do you have any ideas why they used sticks?
I can only relate back to why in Portugal people use sticks.
Why?
Because there were people that were shepherds and they would need the sticks. Okay, and there are at least two sizes of sticks, and there is a whole martial art behind the stick fighting that came from the medieval tradition.
Yeah.
Although the peasants could not use swords, so they would use the stick, and they adapted the technique to use the stick. And later on, I have them. I know pretty well the person that codified the traditional Portuguese stick fighting after the tradition. So it could be something from there, but it could be something else. So.
Okay, so first of all, you are absolutely right. Okay, but there is also another reason. So first of all, as you said, there were farmers and sticks were all around and it was easy to use them. But in Arab tradition, if you kill someone, they have to kill back. Okay, this is called blood, how you say?
Eye for an eye.
Eye for an eye.
Vengeance.
Yeah, how, Isaac?
Vengeance.
Vengeance, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, life for life.
Yep.
So if by incident you fight someone and you kill him, they have to kill back. Like this is their tradition. So this is why they use sticks as well, because they didn't want to kill anyone. So if you use stick, you can cause concussion, you can break their hand or you can break their leg, but the chances people will die are lesser than if you use knives or swords or guns. Yeah. Another thing is that they didn't have lots of guns because at these times Israel was occupied by the Ottoman ruling, and they didn't like, you know, the people to have too many guns. So we can see that in these early 19th century, there were like several self-defense organizations in Israel. One followed the other one. So the first one was Bar Giora when it was formed. After 2 years, it dissolved, and then there was the other one, Shomer, and then it was dissolved, and then it was the Haganah, which actually the Haganah is the major paramilitary organization, which was very strong and very influential in Israel in those times. Now, another point is that in 1917, the British who ruled Israel had a formal declaration which says that Israel should be the home for the Jewish people. Okay, now this is a formal declaration of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the British government. So now let's start seeing all these pieces fall together. Okay, we have like a nation which was in exile many times for many years, and they are suffering a lot. And they are starting to see that other nations progress and they don't progress. And they say, okay, let's do something. So let's do something and rely on our heritage. So where will we go? We go back to Israel because this is our origin. Now we have to do something. So we have to be strong. We have to fight. We have to be able to encounter all dangers. And in the same time, on the political area, a Jewish politician paid lots of pressure on British government to issue this declaration that the United Nations favors the Israeli nation to go back to Israel. Okay? Questions, guys? I don't hear you.
I do have a question.
Yes, please.
Was there a reason other than maybe, well, I guess my question is, in Haganah, if you look at the martial, I guess the self-defense training there, the Haganah is the one that lasted about 28 years. Was there a reason for that? I'm assuming because it was more effective or politically moved. I don't know. I guess I just wanted to know why Haganah lasted longer or more than the other martial art, the self-defense training.
Okay, I tell you what I think. Okay, and again, it's not what I know. It's important for me to emphasize. It's what I think.
Okay.
Now, Bar Giora and the Shomer were very local. Okay, and you can see like the size of them. They were very small. You see a Shomer, it's 120 guys. Okay, so they did an impact mostly on the moral, I say, the atmosphere, morale of the Jewish people, because actually we have Jews who are guards. We fulfill the Zionist dream. Now you can see the picture here of these guys. Look, they have guns, and they are protecting us. So it's more like a moral thing, but it wasn't so big. Now the Haganah was much more organized.
Okay.
So they were already starting to be organized as an army. And several people of the Haganah served before in the British Army, and they served in World War I. Okay, so it started to be structured much more in organized manner. They started to recruit young people from high school. Okay, and they had lots of structured coaching of fundamental, how you say, training to become actually soldier. Okay, so I think the structure was much better, and also you can see that actually somewhere around here, the Ottoman Republic lost Israel to the British. So again, this made some change in the spirit in Israel and gave more place actually for more activity. This is what I think.
And Guy, what were the two questions? What were the funding sources for Haganah versus Ashamar, and how was this organization, I'm going to say, structured in the civilian life? Is this like a paramilitary organization, like a club, like a civilian? I'm trying to understand what maintained the drive and how was it structured within the almost Israeli state to be. So how can someone says, oh, it's fine, these guys have guns, they can be here, they can keep on growing, it's all good. How does that work?
Okay, first of all, they didn't have any finance. Okay, so finance actually was built on donations of rich Jews all over who donated money, and people mostly volunteered. Okay, so they had very small budgets, but they didn't have any finance. Okay, like structured the finance. Now, both my parents were in the Haganah. Okay, So you must understand that they went to the scouts, you know scouts?
Yeah.
Yeah, scouts.
Yes.
But scouts was Haganah.
Understood. Okay.
So the British didn't know. It was all like the British know that something is happening. Okay, and there was like Jewish organizations and everything, but whenever my parents went to summer camp from the Sofim, from the scouts, they went to train. And they taught them how to fight with sticks, and they taught them self-defense, and they taught them how to use the guns. But they had to do it like without being noticed. So always someone was looking out there to see if the British are not coming. Okay, and like weapons were always in concealed, and the British used to come to houses and look for weapons. Okay, it wasn't so easy like or you know as we might think. But the structure was that there were like actually battalions. So there was a head of battalions, and there were platoons, and there were classes, and there were divisions, and it was very organized. Okay, did I answer?
Yeah. Yes, I see where this came from.
Yeah. Now at these times when the British were in Israel, there were actually three how you say, under the radar organizations. So there were Etzel and Lehi, which were very militant. And these two organizations made a lot of bombing against the British government, and even killed British officers and kidnapped British officers, and they did lots of mess. And the Haganah was the more moderate organization. So actually the British preferred to deal with the Haganah than with the other organizations. And these three organizations were fighting among them as well. And it was not nice because they were snitching on one another, because everyone thought that he was right. So actually it's not like so easy as I say it here. Okay. So the Haganah was actually the main organization, and they were starting to look for a self-defense method that they will be able to teach their members. Usually they did some kind of jiu-jitsu and boxing and whatever they had found from former organization, which what we discussed before, like the guys from Rehovot, the ex-Russian soldiers, but all these things didn't work. So eventually when there were riots with Arabs, Jews lost. Because if they learn jiu-jitsu or boxing, you cannot encounter a knife or a stick or a stone with this knowledge, especially when you train for very little time. So the Haganah was in kind of a problem, and they didn't know how to cope with it. Do you know this guy?
Yeah, I know him from your lecture, but yeah, that's when I know him. I know the technique. Okay, the techniques. I recall the techniques from two different. To be fair, from three completely different sites in the world. Really, like completely, like one side of Krav Maga, another side of Silat, and another side of karate. It's like, oh, but I don't remember his name. Oh man, please.
Okay, this guy is Dr. Moshe Feldenkrais. Now, Moshe Feldenkrais was born in Belarus. At age 14, he left his home alone and came to Israel as part of Zionism. He was very influenced by Zionism. He also fought with his father. And he decided to immigrate to Israel. Now, when he was a young boy, about the age or 8 or 10, I don't remember, he went with his father one day with a cart with horses, and there were his father, himself, and 4 other passengers, and they were attacked by bandits. And the bandits killed the other passengers, and Feldenkrais's father killed the bandits. So at a very young age, he was exposed to violence, and he had lots of experience in brawls in Belarus before he came to Israel. Now, when he came to Israel, and again, remember, he was 14 or something, he started to work here, and then he saw all the riots against Jews. So there was one guy who was a German who had some experience in Jiu-Jitsu, and he was teaching the members of the Haganah Jiu-Jitsu. And Feldenkrais noticed that all these guys who learned Jiu-Jitsu, it didn't work. Like in real combat, it didn't work. And he was very frustrated about it. And he decided that he has to do something about it. So Feldenkrais started to search the human body. And actually, he took guys, he started to attack them with knives, and he photographed the reactions. He conducted like a research. And then he noticed that most people, whenever they are being attacked with a knife by surprise, they react the same. So he took this reaction, and upon this reaction, he built a set of movement. And he trained the guys with the unconscious reaction together with what he developed. He trained them for 3 months. He stopped training for 1 year, and after 1 year, he checked again to see if the reaction is still complete. Okay, in a minute, I'll say it in other words, okay? And he found that it works. Meaning that if someone is being attacked by a knife and the first reaction is this, and then Feldenkrais taught him something, and they were working on it for 3 months, after 1 year of stopping training, this reaction still exists in the human body. And this is actually the essence of Krav Maga. Okay? And this is something which was discovered by Moshe Feldenkrais. Okay, now I'm going to say it in other terminology, which is more scientific terminology. In our body, we have reflexes. Reflexes are very fast movements which are conducted in response to some kind of stimuli. Now, the idea is that reflex doesn't go through the brain. It goes through the spinal cord or the, how you call it, rectal brain? The
Brainstem. Brainstem.
Thank you, the brainstem. Okay, so it's very fast. Now, I always give the example, if you touch something hot, your hand goes back, right? You don't think, oh, it's hot, maybe I should take my hand away. So what Feldenkrais discovered, in English, they call it the stratal reflex. Okay, so actually, when he made the pictures of people being attacked, what he saw is the stratal reflex. And he says, okay, this is the free reflex. This is what people will do. It doesn't matter what they train or how they train. This is how they will react. Now I'll take this movement and I'll build a follow-up combination. And he taught and trained it for lots of repetitions. Now, scientifically, we say he created a motor pattern. The motor pattern is like a computer program. Now, whenever you are a martial artist or an athlete or whatever, you want your body to react automatically. When a basketball player is seeing something of an inning and is running and is bouncing the ball and he shots the ball in the basket, he doesn't think. It's automatic. So you want your movements to be automatic. But by taking the reflex, combining it to a movement, Feldenkrais shortened the time it takes to build a motor pattern. Okay, think about it and see if you have any questions, because this is the main point of Krav Maga.
Do you think the question of analysis is disturbing in here, because prior to this, martial arts would be transmitted in, hey, come here, I do this, you see my pattern, I do your pattern, I see, you know. I would say, or other cultures, to be a one-to-one or a one-to-many, or a one-to. But the fact that you have technology now showing patterns, and you can analyze you can analyze behavior. Do you think this is the key? This was, because I don't know what the others did. I've seen the studies in karate for striking to understand strength and biomechanics, but the fact that he picked up, okay, let's take the pictures, check in what's the reflex, see the pattern. How can I build on the pattern to do that? So use the technology, I'm going to say a technology set to say what is the pattern versus all the other things that after 0.20 milliseconds, we cannot see anything. So, but with the camera, you can. Do you think this was the key to, I should not be doing that. Let's do this in this way? What was a technology advantage that changed this?
No, what I think, okay, and Moshe Feldenkrais write it, okay? So later I'll forward you the interview with Moshe. Moshe says, and I'll try to, quote him, but it's from memory. And he says, all these guys who studied jiu-jitsu were either killed or injured. So I understand this is an idiotic system, because if you want to be a samurai, you need to train for 20 years. And we don't have this time. We don't have 20 years to be able to counter these attacks. So actually what he was looking for a way to shorten the learning time and to be effective. Now, I think that he could do it also without a camera. But with camera, it's easy. If you would look at 100 people and you'd see the same. So I don't think the thing is the camera. I think the ingenuity is to realize that there is something which is structured in our human body, and let's use it. Now, I'm not sure, and this is a research that I wanted to conduct in China, but we didn't have the ability to do it, if other nations react the same. Like if you go, and I wanted to do it in the University of Shanghai, University of Sport. We wanted to do it with a colleague of mine there to see what the reaction will be there. Maybe reflex there is different because it's a different nation, different, the Chinese people are very, how you say, not violent. They're not violent. They don't like, the government takes care of everything. The streets are quite quiet, and they're not violent. So maybe if someone will attack them, they will stun and not do this. maybe they will be like this. I don't know. So again, it might be also a matter of culture and nation and not only reflex. Okay, you understand what I mean? So Feldenkrais research is very relevant for Jewish people in the 1920s. We're not sure it will work the same today.
Yeah, yes, yeah. I was trying to put the pattern inside each one of the countries that I've worked in, and I've seen so many differences from Portugal, UK, Brazil, US, and it's like it's small variations on the theme, small variations on the way that people walk, small variations on the way that they present the arms, and it's like, man, this in Norway, it's not the same. I need to change this to this. It's not, to be fair, that's like, it's been puzzling me. Like, even the approach in the distance where people talk with each other, like,
Yeah.
It's been a constant thing. And now more one that I wanted to talk with you as you brought this one is, since at the school level in the US, and I know this because of my son, we've suppressed any notion of contact. It's, you cannot touch anyone. It's if you touch anyone, you'll be banned. It's what I'm saying is that we've suppressed contact at the level of the 14 years old. It's contact is not allowed. What are we doing? I mean, what are we doing to these 14-year-old boys and girls that at a certain moment in time, they have physicality built into my genetic patterns. And now we say, no, you can be aggressive, very aggressive over here, but you cannot push, pull, grab, because that's not allowed. We live in a very, we don't live that way. Not say it's good or bad, but for the purpose of self-defense, what are we doing in terms of emotional management and physical management?
You condemn them for a very bad life. I told you before we started, my son started to go to university in California. Now he's an Israeli, Mediterranean, and most of his friends there are from Europe. He has like Greek friends and Serbian friends and not so much American friends. And he tells me, look, when I want to go and talk to a girl, I go and talk to a girl. The Americans, they text her. They cannot come and talk to a girl. And this is part of what you say, because if there is no contact and everything is like this, so all the culture is different. Now, you and me, we're Mediterranean, so we understand it. So when I see you, hi, how are you? And we touch, and again, we don't have the difficulty also to spar and to fight a little bit because we're used to contact. But when a person is not used to contact, I don't know what will his reaction be, and it's very, very interesting. I don't know, but in my opinion, it's bad.
Okay.
Very bad. All right, guys, anything else on this matter?
I have a couple of questions, but I know the slide deck is not over, so I'll wait.
I'll go on. Okay, so actually, we see as Feldenkrais as the founder of Krav Maga. The Krav Maga name was not born yet. We'll see it in a few minutes where it was born. But actually, the idea of what they call today instinctive defense, reflexive defense, or this is natural movement, or whatever, whenever someone tells me this is natural, so I tell him, how do you know? Did you research? Why do you say this movement is natural? Okay. Or why do you say this movement is instinctive? And what is the difference between instinct and reflex? Okay, we won't dive into it because it's a very wide discussion, okay? But Moshe Feldenkrais, did a research. He took guys, he photographed them, he taught them for 3 months, he stopped training for 3 months, he checked their reaction after 1 year. It was good. The Haganah gave him money for 3 years to teach all the Haganah members this method that he invented. And of course, like the method he invented was built on other techniques. Okay, from jiu-jitsu, boxing, whatever. But the idea is how you harnessed the straddle reflex into self-defense. Okay, so this was Feldenkrais's ingenuity. What's a bit nice for me, again, you see this guy here with Feldenkrais. So this guy, his name is Emil, and he was actually a regional boxing champion, like regional of the Middle East. And he was a Feldenkrais partner for shooting and developing and everything. And when I studied swimming when I was 6, I studied swimming with Emil, this guy. Now, again, I'm doing this research, and I'm going to archive and this, and I see Emil. Now, I remembered the name Emil because Emil is a mythology figure in Israel. This is how you say, a mythology, yeah, something. And then
Mythological.
Mythological, thank you. And I go to my father and I say to him, Dad, when you took me for swimming lessons at Emil, was it this Emil? He says, yes, this was this Emil. So it was like, for me, like I studied with this guy. This guy was Feldenkrais's partner. He taught me how to swim. So it was like something very, private and emotional, but I have like a private connection to this guy. So after Feldenkrais developed his method, he had to leave Israel because he was afraid that the British, to govern the state, would arrest him. So you understand that you have here a guy, this Feldenkrais, he teaches all the Haganah members how to fight. Everything is undercover. And then he publishes a book, and then he has to go away because otherwise they'll put him in prison. So just like, a small anecdote, he moved to France, he completed a PhD degree there and the laboratory of Madame Curie, which is a Nobel winning prize. And then he moved to Britain and he taught the British Army self-defense during World War II. And then after a while, he came back to Israel as a rocket scientist. And then at a more advanced age, he developed the Feldenkrais method. Now, this method is well known all over the world. If you look at it, you will see it. So there is a claim that Feldenkrais is one of the more, brilliant people in the world, because actually he did lots of things and he was very influential. And if you have some time, just search for his name in the web. Also search for Hadaka Jime by Moshe Feldenkrais. Hadaka Jime is his favorite technique, and he wrote a small booklet which can be found free in the internet. So it's very interesting to look after him. So Feldenkrais had to leave Israel, and then the Haganah, they had like a position which was called head judo instructor. Now they call it judo, but it had nothing to do with judo. And even they didn't write it right with a J, they write it with a Z. Okay, more like judo. And Gershon Kofler was the head of judo instruction in the Haganah. And then they developed Feldenkrais method, but they call it sport magen. Magen is defense. So actually the meaning is defensive sport. Why they call it this way? So they can continue practice. So if the British came, oh no, this is not combat, this is sport magen. Okay, it's defensive sport. And they taught it in high school, and they taught it in the scouts, and they taught it everywhere. And they taught there lots of techniques, and they taught here how to throw stones, and they taught here how to navigate, and they taught here lots of things. And I have a very old book from 1930. Again, my father told me to buy this book because this is the book that he had when he was 10 years old. This is the book that they studied self-defense from. So all these pictures are from this book. Yeah, it's great. Like, you know, the smell of the book from 1930. Yeah. So Gershon Koffler was the leading figure in these years. 1940, we have another guy who was responsible for developing Kapap. So they were Israelis' demonstrations against the British in Israel. And the British sent soldiers with batons to dissolve these, how you call demonstrations. And lots of Israelis were injured because of the batons, okay? This is the right phrase, baton?
Yeah,
Yeah.
stick.
Stick.
Baton, yeah.
But baton, yeah.
Okay, so again, Meshel Horowitz followed Feldenkrais, and he said, okay, he took some guys, he started to attack them with batons, and he wanted to see how they react. So he discovered again that there is some kind of like semi-reflex movement which is done at the beginning, and he developed a method with some guys. Okay, he didn't do it alone. He says that I did it with some colleagues. And first of all, they took the British baton and they add 1 inch to it. Sorry, 2 inch to it. So the Israelis' batons will be longer. Okay, and 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. Here it is. It could be hidden. You see? So my father showed me how they put it in the sleeve. So they can walk with the baton in the stick and the British would not know that they have it there. And if there was like some kind of problem with the British, so they'll be able to counter them. Okay, so actually Kapap is not against the Arabs, it's against the British. And Meshel Horowitz was the leading figure here. And they had like two, how you say, not schools, two
Lines.
concepts. Two concepts. One concept was the short stick and the other concept was the long stick.
Yeah.
And they were also always arguing which one is better. So eventually they decided that the long stick is more for civilians and the short stick will be more for combat soldiers of the Haganah. So guys who were more designated actually to fight, they learned the short stick method. And my father said that after each training they had, his hands were all bruised because they were hitting each other on the hand. Also as part of the techniques, but sometimes also as mistakes. And I remember, again, when I did the research, and my father, unfortunately, he died 3 years ago, but we went down to the backyard and I brought some sticks and this guy was 85 already. And he showed me moves. Like we held the stick like this and we have this and we have this. And we were fighting and we're having lots of fun. And I asked him, Dad, what do you remember from all this training? And he says, I remember it was painful. This is the main thing that he remembered from all this training. But he did remember the techniques. Okay, so like the basic technique, again, as we see here on the right, I hope you can see it. So this basic technique is actually the one that he remembered completely, and all the rest, like he was quite knowledgeable about them at age 85. Okay, so it means that there is a motor program that was imprinted in his brain. So even after 60 or 70 years, he still remembers it and he can do it. Gershon Koffler died in action. and Judo Marcus replaced him as head of judo instructor. Again, it was called Sport Magen. And in these times, they published a book which is called Practical Judo. Now, this book is very important. Let's see if we have it here. Here is the first page of the book, because it defines the basic principles of Israeli combat discipline. Okay, you see here 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the 4 basic principles. And here it says general principles. And here it says Krav Maga. So actually, this is the first time that I found in writing the term Krav Maga. So this is what's written in the beginning of the book. The aim of this book is to teach the soldier the technical basics of judo. Remember, it's not judo, okay? It's just the name. So he can overcome an adversary barehanded in Krav Maga, in combat contact, not a specific discipline as we think today, by using his strength, cunning, aggressive drills, and by using target points. Okay? Now, in Feldenkrais's book, which was written, I think in 1920, he has about 20 pages about cunning. And he says there that if you're fighting, you should not fight fair. And he gives there lots of ideas how to win a fight, not fairly.
I'll show it to you in a little bit.
No, just tell me.
No. You have
Okay, so again, we can see that this book, Judo Shimushi, actually continues ideas which were implemented by Feldenkrais in the first book that he published. And again, this is the first time that we see Krav Maga. I'll just try to translate you the principles, not word by word, but I think they are very important. And one of my ambitions is to write another paper on Krav Maga principles. I'm still thinking about it, how to do it, but this should be the base of this paper. So the first principle says that wrestling does not come as replacement to weapon. Meaning if you have a weapon, use it. Don't try to wrestle. The other is every person can wrestle. And it explains that we are not trying to make our people like professional wrestlers. We want to show them in a very short, limited time, tricks, and this is the word, tricks, to give them courage, assertiveness, endurance, and self-confidence. You understand the idea? It's not about technique. It's just about giving you the right tools to be able to fight. Okay? Third is attack, don't defend. And it says contradiction to what was used to be known in the art of defense. Everything should be based and targeted for crucial attack.
Crucial meaning in what
Deadly,
sense?
deadly. Okay? It means that you do an attack to finish the fight. Don't mess about defense. We are not into defense. Okay, now remember for a minute because I want to go back to this point. And the last point is very important. It says, do not teach techniques, teach principles. And then it explains you should explain to the student the principles of judo and its technical fundamentals, so he will be able to adjust himself to the realistic conditions of combat. This is why you should not teach your student combinations of techniques on all their fine and refined movement. Because if you'll do this, you will limit his ability to think. Okay? So, in other words, don't teach techniques, teach principles.
A guy,
Ken.
this seems it seems contradictory to the emphasis on innate actions.
And
It seems contradictory. It seems at least in contrast
to what?
to building on innate responses.
Innate, you mean like motor programmed?
Reflexive.
Okay, so
Reflexive, yes.
okay, so what I want to say here, and I think you have the link to this article. This is the last one which I published. There is something which is called general motor program. Okay, now in the beginning, when we research movement, there was an idea that is a motor pattern, like let's take a baseball batter. You see the ball and he needs to hit it. So it has a motor pattern, right? Otherwise it wouldn't work. It has to be automatic. But then the ball doesn't come always in the same height, right? And not always in the same speed. So it needs to be able to adjust this motor pattern. Okay? So it's more like a general motor pattern, not specific. So the idea, if I teach principle, I teach a general motor pattern. What do I mean? If you have an attack of a knife from above, so we need to block it, right? But it doesn't need to be refined. We need to understand where the threat comes from and what to do with it. So I absolutely agree with you that there is contradiction. Okay, but when you see today how they teach Krav Maga in the army, they teach it according to principles, not according to techniques. And it's a concept. Okay, now the concept means that I'm not focusing on the fine detail. I'm focusing on the idea. Am I clear enough?
More clear, more clear. I wasn't disagreeing, it's just trying to get some clarification.
Yeah, but again, I understand exactly, because it took me quite a time. But remember that Feldenkrais was about 25 years before.
Oh, so this is a bit of an evolution.
Yeah, this is 1945. Feldenkrais discovered the stratal reflex in about 1920. And then he formed these motor patterns from 1920 to 1930s. But he was doing something very structured. And now this is another evolution, I think, which says, okay, don't focus too much on the technique, because the technique will not work. Okay, but if you're focusing on the concept, then you have a better percentage, better
Success,
work.
isn't it?
Yeah.
I've also seen the two schools of thought. The technical one, where you focus completely on all the details and things, and the conceptual one, where you just, we'll go into technique and do this and that. And believe me, it's just too bad, both of them. Sorry, so I just placed a qualitative approach into this because the folks that I know from the one of the conceptual approach take years to pick up a motor pattern and refine it to some level of confidence. Take years because, oh, what if this, what if that? I was like, oh. So there is a line in where what I felt was that concepts need to be placed into practice. And that is the key, that for me has been the key thing is, okay, we need to defend and counter at the same time. What does that mean if someone does not have the same length of the arm? What does that mean? But you need to practice it. And I've seen the discussions going to.
I must stop you. Who says we need to defend and attack at the same time?
Well, it seems to work.
No.
It seems to work, Guy.
I have to disagree. I'll tell you why. Because
okay.
we didn't examine it scientifically.
Oh yes.
After we'll examine it scientifically.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Okay,
I'm saying that it seems to work.
Yeah, because there are two approaches. Okay. One approach says, okay, I want to go 1-2. I'll put all my energy in the block and all my energy in the attack. Other concept says, no, do them both together. But then you get 50% here, 50% here. What is better? Nobody knows.
Measurement.
Okay.
And then,
one of my colleagues, who is one of the leading experts in Israel, he says, when he teaches a technique, he says, we think there might be a good option that this technique will be effective. We think there might be a good option.
Yep.
And then I ask him, why do you say that? He says, because nobody knows. How many people were attacked by a knife and we did it in the same conditions 100 times and saw what is the best option? We don't know. And he says, for me, this is the best option. For you, this is the best option. And anyway, the fight is dynamic. So we don't know. We think it might be. Okay.
Yeah, that's a problem in when we compete under certain types of rules. At the end, someone wins. It's clear, correct? You score this. Well, sometimes the referees can change the game, but overall, there is a measurement system, a success criteria, and it can be replicated. And but in the world of self-defense, sir, and I've been debating this with how do we know? How do we measure? And it's the lack of that. That thing has been troubling my mind. That is, when you work with different students and body types and cultures, things just change. And but I would love to see a measurement system on this. I would really like.
So Dr. Guy, so your point that you're trying to make is that when we're training or when we're explaining to somebody, that when we explain it, is that when you do the defense and then the counter attack at the same time, that's the option that we have. But we shouldn't say from what you're telling us, that we shouldn't say that this is the best route to go.
We don't know about anything, excuse me, that it is the best.
Okay.
We don't know.
But is that the only option that we have, or the option would be to defend and then counter? So that way we have full strength on the defense and then full strength on the counter.
Okay, I'll try to elaborate. Okay. When someone comes to attack me with a knife, what is my best option?
To defend. To defend.
No, to run away.
Okay.
Okay. My best option is not to be there.
Yeah.
Okay. This is self-defense. Okay. We're not talking about Krav Maga. We're not talking about security. We're talking about self-defense. So if now I'm talking about self-defense, my best option is not to be there. So if I plan my route, my self-conduct properly, there are less chances I will encounter someone who will attack me with a knife, right? And this is self-defense. If I have to raise my hand because someone attacks me with a knife, it means I failed before, because I shouldn't reach this position. Okay? Now, okay, I failed. Okay, or this guy is lunatic, so it doesn't matter what I do or what I didn't do, it just come with a knife. So again, my best option is just to move. Again, if I have something in my pockets, I have a bag, I have something, I'll throw at him and I'll run away and let him stab someone else. Okay, this is the timeline. Now, I have no option because he comes at me and I cannot run away. Okay, so I can block from the inside, I can block from the outside, I can maybe kick, I can do many things. Which is better? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Because I don't know what is the structure of the attacker, how long is the knife, how much aggressive he is. I don't know the surroundings, I don't know my abilities in this point. If I can kick now or I cannot kick. Some people will say, don't kick, you lose your balance. Some people will say kick because then you throw him away. We don't know. So I think that what we do know is that we have a threat. The threat is the knife, and I don't want to be where the knife is. So this is the principle.
Understood.
And now, from here, I don't know what to do. Really, I don't know. So some instructors teach many variations because they say this is one option, this is two. I want you to know also this and also this and also this. What the problem is that the more options you have, your reaction time slows down. Okay, this is scientific. And if I have only one option, it might be the wrong option. Okay. You can never win. Okay, if you're looking at things scientifically, you don't have an answer. The more options I have, the longer the reaction time. If I have one option, it might not be the good one for this situation. But if I teach concepts and I teach people to act under stress, then I train them to act properly under stress. And this, again, it's not a technique. Am I clear?
Understood. Yes.
Okay. Guys, yeah, go ahead.
No, it's very clear, Guy, and it raises some very interesting points in terms of training methodology and approach to technical programs, approach to populations. Not everyone is 35 or 25 or 55 or 65. Not everyone. The example that could be strange is that in the US, falls killed 7,000 Americans. Falling.
Ah, okay.
They killed more than guns. And you would argue, if you learn the techniques of Krav Maga within the falls and the rolls, you will be learning self-defense. You could argue that because effectively, if you live in New Jersey, where I live, and you are over 65 years old, you will fall. Within 1 year or two, you will fall. If there is ice, we are come unprepared, and a fall will take you either to either to have a permanent damage or to have an assisted life that changes the whole social construct. Okay, I know it's not a knife, I know it's not a tug, but it did, you weren't doing self-defense. So that's, and are we doing Krav Maga when we do this? It's probably we are. Are we doing self-defense? But it's a thing to think about.
I have to say something, Julio or Julio?
Depends. If you're in Europe, it's Julio. If you're in America, it's Julio.
Okay, so Julio, when you are an instructor, you have to be very confident in what you teach. So what the discussion that we had now is discussion among philosophers. Okay, but when you come and teach, you say, look, the punch and counter together, this is your best option. You cannot be in doubt when you're teaching someone else. Understand? Or someone else will come, no, this is the best option. Because otherwise you cannot teach if you're not confident in what you're teaching. But as an instructor, or what we're doing now is like academical, philosophical discussion, we are above this level. And we have to understand where are we standing. So when I come to teach, and if I teach a technique, and usually I don't teach techniques, okay? I'm quite against it. But if I'll teach a technique, I'll show the technique and I'll need to explain why this technique is good. Even though in the back of my head, I know that there are at least 10 techniques which are at least as good as this one.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, so let's continue.
Guy, I think it's good that you brought that thing on, because when we teach, you need to provide, students are there for you to provide guidance. And we have short time with them. And if we go into all the problems that going to an instructor's head after many years of training, you will either you stay with a small group of students, that's an option, because these folks like that type of thing, or you will confuse everyone. And I can tell you that's, I understand that problem very well, but that's why sometimes reiterating the message, as an instructor, we perform a role and we provide guidance based on the best things that we've been training at. So, but I also think it's important for us as instructors to know that there are many levels or layers in this approach, and this is definitely one of them.
This is why I think it's a little bit referring to what Isaac said in the beginning, that there isn't any one technique, or why there are so many federations and so many techniques and so many ideas, because everyone thinks differently, and it's okay. But I'll never say on a technique that it's not good or it doesn't work. Okay, if this guy teaches this technique and he believes that this technique is good, okay, it's his right. Even if I think something else, I'll never say it. Okay, I'll say everyone is entitled for his opinion. My opinion is different, but that's okay. But I won't say the technique is bad. Okay, even if the technique is bad, I won't say it. Okay, here are some papers, it doesn't matter, all kinds. This is like the first paper in IDF, when I can see the term Krav Maga. And again, you see the term Sport Magen, like in English, you can see here, preparing the training hall for Sport Magen demonstrations, but then they say Krav Maga demonstrations. So they say Sport Magen and Krav Maga and Judo and Kapap, and they use all the terms together in the first years of the Israel, 1948 and about 1958. And around the end of 1950s, the term Krav Maga starts to put down roots, and everybody starts to saying Krav Maga instead of Sport Magen or self-defense or whatever. So here is just like a short timeline of the development of Israeli, how you say, combat. The first evidence was in 1891. Then we have the Bar Giora and the Shomer and so on and so on. Now I want to stop for a minute here. Sorry. In 1942. So in 1942, Imi Lichtenfeld immigrates to Israel. And before he immigrated to Israel, he was in the Haganah, but in Europe. And he was teaching there self-defense. And he was very active to protect Jews in Europe. When he came to Israel, he became a Kapap instructor, because this was the name there. And actually, there was already structured methodology, because there were Feldenkrais and Gershon Kofler and Meshel Horowitz and Yehuda Marcus and many other guys. And they already had some Kapap instructors courses, which were delivered in Israel in those days. So actually, when Imi came to Israel, the methodology was already structured. Okay, and he became one of the instructors. 1948, the state of Israel was formed, and everyone who were in the Haganah became IDF members. So if you were like an officer in the Haganah, now you're an officer in the IDF. You were, like Imi, a Kapap instructor in the Haganah, now you're a Kapap instructor in the IDF. Gradually, the term Krav Maga takes over, and gradually Imi becomes the leading figure in the army in Krav Maga. Why? Because he was there. Okay, like Gershon Kofler was before, and Yehuda Marcus was before, and Feldenkrais was before, so now this is Imi's era. In 1964, Imi retires from the army, and he started to promote Krav Maga as a civilian martial art. He decided to incorporate the judo belt system. So he went to the Israeli Judo Federation and he asked them to examine him for a black belt because he didn't have a belt. Sorry. So this is Imi black belt. Now, I talked to the guys who examined him as part of my research. So I called, it wasn't called yet the Judo Sport Federation, it was called Sport Federation of Israel. And this certificate that says that Imi was entitled, was given a black belt first dan in judo. And this was done because Imi asked them to get a black belt. Okay? Do you get it? Imi wanted to incorporate the belt system, and he says, but I have no belt. So I incorporate the belt system in Krav Maga that myself have no belt. So we went to his friends in the Judo Federation, and he knew judo, it's okay, nothing. And he says, look guys, I need a belt, can you help me? So they say, yeah, go ahead, we'll examine you and we'll give you a first dan. So we'll have a black belt. Okay, this is what happened. Okay, and this is like the original copy, of course, of Imi's first dan. So Imi incorporated the judo belt system. He did in 1971 the first Krav Maga instructor course. This is the publication for this Krav Maga. You know, again, in the archives, you find everything. So people cannot say, where do you come from this information? You invented it. No, it says that from this day to this day, there was a Krav Maga instructors. There were 14 students. You can see here, 14 students. And here it says that the organizer of the course was Imi Lichtenfeld. So again, I didn't invent it. Everything is printed. Everything is documented. I think that this picture actually a little bit is summarized. Because you have here on the left Moshe Feldenkrais. In the middle, you have Imi. And here on the right, you have Eli Avigzal, which was Imi's successor. And you can see that they are all performing the same technique. So only different people like the evaluation of the method, but here still the technique is almost the same. So I know everybody says that him invented Krav Maga, right? This is the notion. This is common knowledge. But as you can see, Krav Maga is a much more profound concept or method, which actually is rooted in the heritage of the Israeli people. It's not something that a person invented. Okay, it's much more. And then you can see Moshe Feldenkrais, Adaka Jime. This is when he was in the British Army. And on the right, you have a KM instructor in the army, exactly the same technique. This is about 1940. This is 2020. Okay, same technique. Still being used today. Thank you, Moshe Feldenkrais. Now I'm all yours.
Guy, wow, that was pretty powerful, sir. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I'll open for their questions. My list will go by email. We also have Professor Andrade on the
Okay.
come next. So please, guys, let's give some questions.
Take some coffee.
Isaac, please go ahead.
Well, there was my original question, and then there was the I suppose the point that you're trying to make, or at least that I got from it, is that it became Krav Maga Israeli, came to be because of the pressures that were exerted on it, and the need to get something up and fast and practical, and there was no, your back is to the wall. There's no other option. There's nowhere else to go. Is that a fair summary statement?
Yeah, exactly. Now you can see what happened on the political, how you say, sphere, and how it affected the development of Krav Maga. Okay, so like there were demonstrations against the British because the British restricted immigrations of Jews to Israel. So this was like a political act. They restricted immigrations of Jews to Israel due to Arab pressure. So there were demonstrations. In the demonstration, the British hit the Israelis. So the Israelis, again, were with the back to the wall. So they had to develop kapap to encounter these things. So like almost everything has like, I don't know if the right term is political or historical, but it has nothing to do with combat. So there was something which is political or historical event that caused, as you say, because our back was to the wall, caused us to develop something because it was a necessity.
Just a couple, like a comment and a request for you to answer the question I had at the beginning. So do you think that, I mean, one of the defining characteristics of the Jewish people is literacy, is pretty much universal literacy for thousands of years. That's one of the reasons for their success. The ability to read.
Read, okay.
Yes,
okay.
yes. So in English, the word is literacy.
Okay,
like
thank you. I missed that, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And so literacy is like a defining characteristics of Judaism. There's really pretty much no culture that has had so many people percentage-wise being literate for so long. It just doesn't exist. And I'm wondering if you have any anything to say about how that, in terms of pedagogy, in terms of passing on knowledge and the special relationship that Jews have towards knowledge and passing on knowledge, whether that, how that, I despise this word, but I don't know a better one, intersects, how that relates to Krav Maga as a system of knowledge that you pass down.
Okay, I think that you identified here something which is very important and crucial, because today we have Instagram, right, or Snapchat or whatever. And in those days, the only way they could spread the ideas were through writings.
Yeah.
And you I think I never thought about it. So thank you very much, because it's very enlightening for me. But the only way it could happen is because what you said, that most of Jewish people can read. Yeah, so thank you. It's very, yeah, enlightening for me.
No, you're quite welcome. I really thought it was awesome how you're digging into first source material. You asked these people, you didn't take it as a legend. That's so, and your honesty in terms of what is our knowledge in terms of the effectiveness of it, that there's limits to that knowledge. That was very impressive. Last thing, if you don't mind, is, and I apologize if I'm hogging time, is that going back to the original question about Krav Maga and being something that emphasizes teaching, and yet it's something that, you know, it's coming from Israel. It's like you're spreading the information on how to, like, I could imagine this would be an exception where you're like, I'm going to keep that information to myself. I'm not going to tell everybody all around how to be more effective fighters. I'm going to try to keep this to myself, because that knowledge could go into bad hands.
Okay, I have to quote here. I had a discussion with one of Israeli leading instructors who teaches civilian Krav Maga, okay, all over the world. And I had a conversation with him, and he told me, again, I don't know if it's true or not, but he told me that in the beginning, there were lots of anger against them because they taught all the world this special system of Krav Maga, which is like a secret weapon of the Israeli army. Now, I must tell you something, that what I see abroad, most of the time, is not military Krav Maga. It's IMI's civilian Krav Maga, which is, I say different. I don't say quite different. I say different. But if you lose the mentality, then it's like karate. It's a martial art. And if you teach too many techniques, then it's not combat Krav Maga, it's Krav Maga as a martial art. Oh, okay, am I on the right page here?
I think I understood that distinction.
Yeah, so you know, when you go to a seminar or a Krav Maga seminar, you want to learn many techniques. Why? First of all, because it's fun. Second, it's interesting. And third, we don't have the patience to do the same technique over and over again and to make it good. So I don't want to be like, how you say, judgmental. Okay, but many instructors teach lots of techniques because this is what the audience wants them to do. Okay, if I go to a seminar and I'll do 4 hours one principle, some of the people will not be able to appreciate it because they came and they wanted to learn 20 techniques and I taught them one principle. But if I teach the principle, then I give them like the I would say the fisherman with the, how you call this?
Teach a man how to fish.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I give them the principle, I teach them how to fish. If I give them the fish, I give them the technique. Now they want the fish, they want the technique, they don't want the principle. So
Guy, and everyone, I need to stop you, everyone in here, and because we have Professor Andrade, I have a set of questions. I think later on we should talk about bring you in again to for some of the questions. Where is Krav Maga going? What are the principles of Krav Maga? Because this is like a banner. You know, you go to many. And I'm talking about myself. We have principles. They come from a certain region or the origin. Others have other principles, region, origin, but it's a banner. And it's interesting to see that some folks say that, oh, we don't teach techniques, we teach principles. And others say we teach, and it's coming down to the details of what does that really mean. So I think it's important to show some research on that, or to bring more content. I don't know if you already have it recorded or prepared, but that would be awesome to see if we can elaborate more on some of the contents as I build for our instructors and for other instructors, content that goes along that it can be deep, but it can also bring discussion to several layers depending on your need. I understand that this might not be a need for everyone. But I really think it's important as a way to understand how this discipline can help the world and help ourselves, to be fair. Guy, thank you very much, sir. Really appreciate your time. Guys, let's say thanks and let's
thank you for your patience, guys, because sometimes it can be a little bit heavy. So really I appreciate it, and I appreciate your questions, because it's very nice to me that you understand that you're very into it. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Guy, speak very soon. Hello.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Guy.
Bye.